This is the Truth Doctor coming to you live with Queen Hatshepsut and Astro Black not with us tonight. And we're going to send the ancestors' protection on him. He's out in the field doing the work. And we want to send that to Astro Black, the protection of the ancestors. And we have a special guest tonight, Brother Muammar Kamal. And he is the representative of the UNIA Incorporated. He out there trying to put Garveyism back into the hearts and the minds of people, because Garveyism was the best thing we ever had. The night show named Loyalty to the Red, Black, and Green, a call back to capitalism. That is many organizations flying the red, black, and green. It's the Republic of New Africa, and it's all these solo people out here flying the red, black, and green. But it was more to the red, black, and green than just the flag. The flag had a program behind the flag. When you fly the red, black, and green, and you don't have the program of the UNIA, it's incomplete. And we are calling everybody that's flying the red, black, and green and calling on the name of Garvey to respect his organization that he built to push this red, black, and green into we're able to plant it in the land we can call our own. And our is getting to lay it all out to you. And I want to present to you tonight Brother Muammar Hall, the representative and the organizer for the UNIAACL Incorporated. Brother Muammar Kamal, the mic is yours.
Yes, sir. Great Garvey Day, and thanks for the invitation again, Truth Doctor. My name again is Muammar Kamal. My name itself means speaker of truth, so I'll try my best to own up to that title. Queen Hatshepsut, greetings to you also. And thanks for the invitation to be a part of the radio broadcast tonight. I guess we're starting with on a somber note, but we all know today that 147 innocent young black students were murdered by some Islamic extremists in Kenya. And I just wanted to give a moment of silence to those who lost their lives. And we're going to talk about loyalty to the red, black, and green, to race first. Now, people all over the world, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, and you and I have spoken about this, Truth Doctor, they fly the red, black, and green. Some fly it, more true to the original, and some fly it in various forms. They have added a little color, or they redesigned it a little bit, but all of them speak to the origin of that red, black, and green flag that many people are repping and proclaiming red, black, and green, but they really don't know the history of it. And even more so, they don't know the universal Ethiopian anthem that accompanied that red, black, and green flag. And so they're actually thinking they're being loyal to a particular ideal, but they're actually being dishonest to the ideal because they haven't really studied the ideal. When we talk about Marcus Garvey, who was the one who introduced that red, black, and green flag, we're talking about a subject that you can give me 20 years on the radio to talk about, and I can never say enough about him and his vision and program and philosophy. So the subject tonight. This is kind of a 102 on Garveyism because last time I think I covered some of the basics about the gospel of Garveyism. I wanted to get a little more into what Garveyism is today, philosophically speaking, and less on the history, but still, talking about the history because we got to talk about the red, black, and green. Many of us know that the red, black, and green was introduced in 1920. It was introduced at the international convention called by Marcus Garvey. At the time, he had 2 million members of the UNIA, which was an association for the uplift of the race. And when he introduced this plebiscite, the first and only plebiscite we've ever had, where you had 25,000 delegates from 40 countries from all around the world, from Australia to throughout Africa and Europe and everywhere else, South Central America, pouring into this international convention. 25,000 delegates packed Madison Square Garden to capacity. There was a lot of haters trying to undermine the amount of delegates that attended, but there was definitely, even according to white newspapers, 25,000 delegates. And on top of that, there was another 15,000 outside the Madison Square Garden standby delegates waiting to get in. The pageantry of the event, a lot of special occasions, people were knighted, etc. There was a 10-mile-long parade. People were jumping down off parachutes in the parade. There was, all kind of pomp and pageantry associated with that. And at that particular convention, it was a convention to decide the fate of a race. It was a convention to decide what was going to be the fate of Africans at home and abroad. Of course, we had people like Cecil Rhodes at the time, mass murdering millions of black people in just, Belgium, Congo alone. You got people, Mozambique, etc. You got people all over Africa, the Ashanti Wars had ended and, millions captured, killed, exploited all over the continent from Cape Town to Cairo. We were being exploited by other races, aliens who had invaded and conquered and taken everything. So we needed, as well as in the South after hundreds of years of enslavement, we needed to have an official structure or provisional government where we can become a self-governing and sovereign race of people. So there was a set of declarations that we had placed, just like any other self-governing body who first declares their independence and then asserts for themselves rights, because, of course, free people don't beg for rights. They declare their rights, and they dare anybody to violate those rights. So naturally, we, as other people in the world would have done, organized ourselves and decided to declare for ourselves certain implements of statehood, as well as a set of declarations to ensure that we all over the world understood what our rights were and vowed to the last drop of blood to avenge anybody who violate, our rights, etc., and or to take action against those people who dare to challenge those rights. Anyway, one of the declarations that was introduced in 1920, this convention, was the red, black, and green flag. Alongside the red, black, and green flag, there was also another anthem that was introduced called the Universal Ethiopian Anthem, or Ethiopia, the Land of Our Fathers. The importance of this anthem that accompanied the red, black, and green, and we're going to talk about loyalty to it, is that the anthem was challenged during that same year by a group that was founded and funded by Zionist Jews called the NAACP. And this NAACP had found a gentleman by the name of James Weldon Johnson, who they had just appointed the field secretary for the NAACP. And this field hand for the NAACP, who was an avowed integrationist and diplomatic agent for the U.S. government, he was an American consul for the last 10, 15 years up to that point for the U.S. government anywhere they wanted to dispatch him. He had designed, or had written back in 1900, an ode to one of his heroes, Abraham Lincoln. And this ode to Abraham Lincoln, written in 1900, one of the most racist devils short of Adolf, was written to encourage blacks to be more patriotic to the land of their nativity and the God of their nativity, America. It was designed to, just like some of his other songs on The Flag That Never Touched the Ground, which was dedicated to the red, white, and blue. These were Negro patriotism songs. And this hymn that he actually was a poem turned into a hymn when his brother added some music to it over the years, and some people liked it. And eventually, when he joined the NAACP, he was, during the same year that the UNIA was introducing this flag and this anthem, they decided to try to preempt it by having his song adopted as the official anthem of Negro people. This is the Zionist Jew chairman, Joel A. Spingarn, who decided that he wanted that hymn to become the actual anthem of the UNIA, not a UNIA of the race. Now, how a Zionist Jew, who also doubled as the chair of the Military Intelligence, a Negro Subversion Division of the U.S. military, decide for black people what their anthem was going to be is ridiculous. We call that lift every voice and sing crap and anthem, but that's nothing to do with the red, black, and green flag. It's an absolute diametric opposite in purpose and in ideal to the red, black, and green flag. And you actually spit in the face of Garvey and all those who helped put together that symbol of our sovereignty and statehood and nation within a nation, etc. When you sing that song, in the same time you flying the red, black, and green flag. And I want to make that point exceptionally clear. This was, again, a European-inspired, avowed integrationist penned or written song that was adopted by a Zionist, racist, military intelligence Jew. And this is not a song nobody of African descent should be singing, that lift every voice stuff. Now, that said, let's talk about red, black, and green. Red, black, and green was adopted by the association. Again, at this international convention, everybody who was delegates at this convention all had to get 1,000 signatures from people of African descent in their neighborhoods in order to be accepted as a delegate at this convention. So you have here a couple, say like 250,000 people, I guess they would roughly estimate out to, who showed up at this, that's 2 million. Anyway, my math is a little off. But you have people from all over the world representing and introducing this delegate, and they introduced introducing this declaration. They introduced a lot of other things at the same time. And then after the UNIA, had its challenges, at the peak of the movement, we went up to 12 million, and over time, we began to trickle down in numbers as the not only the U.S. but several world leading countries in Europe, as well as some of the colonial countries throughout South Central America and the Caribbean, were targeting Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. Were trying to discredit our founder, trying to trash talk, him before the world and try to railroad him and get him incarcerated. All this was going on to decentralize the movement. Eventually, it succeeded to some extent, and the numbers of the association began to dwindle. And people who were once active in the UNIA, who saw the vision, understood it, a vision that even Mr. Garvey's enemies declared was worth 1,000 years of the united endeavor of all mankind to accomplish. This is what his enemies say about him. These were the very people who eventually left the UNIA and started UNIA-like movements. They started a lot of parallel movements. Some, felt now that Mr. Garvey was safely incarcerated or, eventually deported from the country, that, well, they got a better plan. Despite all of his accomplishments, despite the millions of members, the shipping factories, the restaurants, newspapers, even had a Bureau of Aeronautics many people don't know about, but we were actually preparing with the number of helicopters we had to actually fly goods as well as ship goods and services all across the world, as well as promoting it through the Negro World newspaper, which was the widest circulating paper at this time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But many people who thought they had a better mousetrap or that, Mr. Garvey was okay, but they got a better idea, came on the scene and they started pushing similar ideas, and many of them would even give credit to some extent to Mr. Garvey and say, oh, yeah, well, he's the forerunner to us, but, we the real deal. He's okay, but, you all need to come to us if you all really want to build, because we got the plan now. Some were religious leaders, some were political leaders, some were socialists, some were, communists and, different sorts of ideologies, which were foreign, actually, to what Garveyism was and stood for. Even though Mr. Garvey was not antithetical to religion itself or politics, he warned us in the creed, African fundamentalism, that to stay away from religious scruples and political machinations that will divide us, which we see was everywhere. And so the people who left the association and went their separate ways, and I won't necessarily mention names at this point. Some of them, started different Islamic or Christian churches that practice a form of nationalism, but it was, of course, more cliquism because, if you didn't adopt the faith, you couldn't be part of their group. If you were in a radical kind of black nationalistic, socialistic group, if you didn't ascribe to the political ideology that they did, then you weren't going to be part of the group. So we began to divide ourselves. We began to look for solutions outside of what had already been working. And then, according to my understanding of the word insanity, one definition is that insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, which, of course, the flip side would be sanity, therefore, is doing the same thing and expecting the same results. And we see that Mr. Garvey's results were working, that his thoughts and ideas and plans were working for us. And those who came after us didn't have not nearly the same level of success that he had. His program was a tried, tested, and true program that we saw work effectively. But those who kind of stepped on it and changed it around a little bit and added their little idea to didn't enjoy the same level of success. And so today we are looking at the best way to honor the red, black, and green is to go back to the source, is to go back, not to, some people want to add stars and stripes to the red, black, and green flag. Some people want to, bring in these other religio nationalist programs. But we can see now in Kenya that these programs aren't race first. A lot of them are religion first or politics first. A lot of people talk about race first, which sounds good, but they don't really understand the nature of it and practice it properly. Because if you looked at race first, like folks in Kenya, if they were race first, you wouldn't have black Muslims extremists over there murdering children and little girls in Nigeria being slaughtered by the hundreds. For what reason? For religious purposes? They are your family first. They're your race first. Why are you putting religion above your family interests? This is wrong. The same thing with cultural nationalism. Sometimes, we find out how much we've been railroaded by white supremacy that we begin to study how much of our culture, language, names, and religion that they took from us, and we try to replace that. But sometimes in the process of doing that, there's a certain trapping that we fall into of elevating that above racial interests. And sometimes when we elevate our cultural differences, our cultural preferences over our racial commonalities, we sometimes get kind of elitist and imperialistic with one another, where we don't want to deal with somebody because they're not African enough, or we don't agree with their cultural ideology. But that's going back to the tribalism. That's the same thing that got us in this position we're in. We thinking that we don't have allegiance to race first, but to culture first and to religion first and all these other isms first. But the first, to ourselves, we got to be true. Charity starts at home. As Mr. Garvey would say, in a world of wolves, one must go armed, and the best defensive weapon within reach of the first race, which is us, is the practice of race first in all parts of the world. And so I see I'm taking about 20 minutes of your time. I didn't want to go beyond that without coming in for a landing. But I just wanted to state that loyalty to the red, black, and green, again, is loyalty to the philosophy of race first that produced the red, black, and green flag. And so if we have that identity of the red, black, and green that symbolizes who we are and who we are not, then we should want to look at the origins of that and be totally true to its intent and purpose, which we can see clearly outlined in not only the philosophy of the UNIA, but also the aims and objects of the UNIA, et cetera. So anyway, I wanted to take a break and see if you wanted to cut in there, or you and the Queen, I should say, wanted to cut in there, or if any of the guests wanted to call and ask a question.
Well, we're not ready to let no guests in because we have questions for you.
Okay.
And we want to let you rest a little bit. But I want you to talk about what inspired Marcus Garvey to create the red, black, and green. And talk about the song that was being sung about Negroes that made him stand up, create the flag where there was only two flags at that time. The one in Liberia that was a copy of the American flag, one star, and the one that was in Ethiopia that was red, black, green, and gold. Could you?
The Haitian flag also was independent, African-led nation, but that wasn't on the continent. But the initially when Mr. Garvey, who hails from Jamaica, he as most people know his story. He was raised in Jamaica. He became a printer, and he ran into a printing strike where he threw his lot in with the workers, even though he was a supervisor, and he began to advocate nationalist independence for Jamaica. And eventually, after jobs became scarce, he traveled to Central America and seen workers being exploited, black workers being exploited, and this was by the Western interests who were getting people to work on the Panama Canal and in Costa Rica, et cetera, on the banana plantation. People were being exploited. They were getting robbed by the same people who paid them. So he decided to first seek remedy since the Jamaican, mostly workers who were being robbed, were subjects of the British Empire. He decided to appeal to the British Embassy for redress when these people were getting robbed by the industries that were paying them. Shortly after you get your check and get your money, you go walk off to go rest, and someone's bringing a gun up on you and stealing your money from you. Then put you back in debt again to go work, like sharecropping. So anyway, when he went to the British Empire for redress, they said pretty much that's your problem. They're not, British citizens, so we're not really concerned about what happened. Do what you can do. And he noticed that when the Asian workers encountered problems and went to their embassy, they got redressed. Because their government was willing to go to war if they kept, robbing their citizens of just due. And when Mr. Garvey began to travel more and more, he began to see that everywhere we went, where he began to question, where's our army, our navy, our men of big affairs? Where's our king and kingdom? Who's going to represent and protect and lend support, and protection to people of African descent across the world? And when he didn't see that, he decided it was a high time we established that and build that government and that racial hierarchy to protect ourselves. And so ideas of statehood were introduced into his brain out of the necessity and the exploitation of this organized race of ours. And eventually, when he came to the U.S., he had an idea for a flag. The elder Garvey told me initially it was green and black, but that over time, this international convention was coming, and we wanted to ratify the symbol of statehood. There was a popular song that kept eating away at his conscience. This song that these Europeans, I forgot their names, Heffen somebody, but it was a popular song at the time. It was a humorous song called "Every Race Has a Flag But the Coon," and this was, matter of fact, I have a copy of that somewhere I can pull out. But they were singing about the Irish have a flag, even. Some native people have flags. Everybody around the world has flags, but not that old coon. Negroes don't have nothing. Nobody wants them. Nobody's going to do anything for them. They don't know how to govern themselves. Of course, this is the same time, not too long ago, we had Birth of a Nation. We had, always talking about black folks can govern. They can regulate themselves. They need to be regulated. At the same time, you also had a growing eugenics movement. People like Alexander Graham Bell, who was going around saying that black people's brains were too small and they weren't fit to be independent and self-governing. So it was all this pressure on us to demonstrate that we can do as any other race did. Although we were not too long ago enslaved, we were only the last to be enslaved because every race on the planet had been enslaved at some point. And so we wanted to demonstrate that we had the same right and interest in developing implements of statehood that would be governing and rallying symbols for our independence. So the idea for the red, black, and green was introduced. And it's interesting that at the same time that this red, black, and green flag was being prepared, the anthem, this flag, was also being prepared to be written. And the inspiration behind that was connected to the red, black, and green flag because it was an African Hebrew Israelite who was from Barbados by the name of Rabbi Arnold Josiah Ford. He later was one of the first repatriates to Shashamane in Ethiopia. But Rabbi Arnold Josiah Ford had been inspired to write an anthem for the race because he had witnessed the washing up on shores of a young black woman who torso was, chopped up and ripped and was caught in the rudder of a ship. And when they brought her and some of the other ligaments washed up, put her body on the ground in the green grass, the red blood began to flow. He was in tears. And the story behind the young woman's murder was that she used to be a domestic for a white yuppie couple. And this white yuppie couple, I think, was in New Jersey. They had abused her. The husband had raped her on a number of occasions. So when she had, the woman appealed to the female to tell her what her husband was doing to her, she decided, to tell her husband what she had said, and they decided to come together and kill her and chop her up into pieces and to throw her out in the ocean. So when it finally came out what had happened in the news, the same media that was saying this was cruel, massacre, murderous, all of a sudden hushed it up and snuck the couple, the couple snuck away, went back to their native land, and it was kind of quieted up real fast. But this egregious disrespect and murder was introduced into the song. The sentiment was introduced into the song, and the call to advance the victory, let Africa be free, was put into the song. And, we talked about defending the red, black, and green, even when swords come outward to gleam, because this is our calling to defend the virtue and honor of our women and children. Just like, again, we see in was needed in Kenya. There were some that finally caught some of the bad guys, but, how often will this happen again? This is happening quite often in Rwanda and some, other countries throughout Africa. There's a level of disrespect we have because we don't adopt the gospel of Garveyism, because we don't understand race first, and we understand the Europeans have an interest. I mean, they have political differences, they have religious differences, but when it comes to their racial interests, they know how to elevate that above everything else, and that bonds them together. Same way as Jews and certain other groups, they know how to come together around what really matters, even if they have political differences. Somehow, we don't seem to practice that. And I think us developing more of a respect and homage for the red, black, and green and the process which produced that would help us become more independent thinking and become more consolidated in our actions to work towards self-determination and, redemption of Africa, which Mr. Garvey defined as a great commission to not only recover Africa for the Africans, but to rescue the souls of Africa's sons and daughters from social, political, economic, and spiritual bondage and restore them to a ground of vantage to secure the true uplift of the race and the good of the human family. So that's, part and parcel of why I think is critical that we begin to rally and represent red, black, and green as much as possible everywhere, the same way the Europeans, when 9/11 struck during times of tragedy, people tend to rally around their patriotic, symbols. And it seems that, the way we're so war-torn and getting shot down, mowed down, I should say, like dogs in the street by racist police officers everywhere we go, and while our children are getting miseducated and uneducated in the school systems and everywhere we go, we getting inundated with all these population control tools. And I mean, it's too much going on that we really need to start rallying and introducing a new set of ideals for those who don't know and expose the hate that hate produced, which we see every day, and start, countering that hate with some love for ourselves and our identity that's reflected through the red, black, and green.
Yes. But we see in a lot of people flying this red, black, and green, that thing that the riot in Ferguson, you've seen a gigantic red, black, and green out there. I mean, this everywhere now. I mean, even the NAACP members are using the red, black, and green. All kinds of people are using the red, black, and green, but they are not using the red, black, and green in the context of nationalism and nation building. They're using it for civil rights and white man treat me better here in America, and begging on their knees, constantly begging the white man. And Marcus Garvey, he didn't do it that way. Marcus Garvey could care less what the white man was doing, long as he wasn't attacking black people, because his ideology was to let the white man go, let him do what he's doing, let us do the same thing, let us be men of the world, let us rise up and take our seat at the table of the world and the powers of the world. And this nationalistic ideal has been killed in favor of a subtle cultural Malana Karinga type thing. Even Kwanzaa, a fake African holiday, has taken the red, black, and green and changed it into what they wanted to represent. And I think this is a travesty, a big travesty, where they're taking the red, black, and green and taking it out of the context what it was meant for. When the white man don't care if you walk around with African clothes on, beating drums and all that, that don't mean nothing to him. Long as you're not thinking about nation building and disturbing the things that he got set forth, how he wants the world to run and how he wants you to really act. And then, like you said, this song and these people who created the song and all these agents, and I even had a foolish person tell me that Marcus Garvey failed. And I almost went ballistic. Like, my brother, every organization that America had and Britain had and other countries had was thrown at Garvey. They imprisoned him, and then he was not even really deported legally. The people deported him against the president at that time. I think it was was it Truman?
No,
the president
Harding.
Harding. The president at that time, didn't even sign the papers, but they wanted him out of here. And people were still supporting Garvey. They were sending him money and everything, and the Postal Service like, why is all these envelopes of money going for this guy? They cut off his money so he couldn't operate the UNIA outside of America, because that's what he tried to do. He had went to the point to where he went to Jamaica. The Jamaicans didn't want to be black. They basically cast him out, and he went to England to fight the people in their home front to try to lift up black people. They would not let him back in America. All the UNIA chapters were petitioning. Letters, incredible letters going to the government to tell them that to petition them to let Marcus Garvey back in this country. So what Marcus Garvey did when he got back in this country, he went to Canada, closest he can get. And then he had his best members come to a class of that African fundamentalism. And it's a book called A Message to the People and a Course in African Fundamentalism. And these people learned this book and everything because they were supposed to be our leaders afterwards. Garvey's whole plan was to take the UNIA and put it into Africa, to get on some piece of African land as a bankhead, as a what they call it, a bunkhead, a beachhead, so he can work from there to take over Africa, to redeem Africa. I mean, this was about redeeming. This was about taking back what is yours. But now the red, black, and green is a symbol in the hands of these other people as a symbol of begging and pleading with these white folks. And I think that this is a disgrace. Now, I'm going to ask Queen Hatshepsut to come in and ask you the questions that she want to ask. Queen Hatshepsut, the mic is yours, sister.
Peace, everybody. Yes, I want to know how you feel about these brothers and sisters out here. You know, they out here selling oils, they designing jewelry with the red, black, and green. They're even, like you said, putting extra stuff to it, because I actually seen some red, black, and green flags that actually contain the Star of David. I've seen some with the Islamic crescent, you know. So what do you think about that?
Well, you know, that's I have mixed feelings about that. I mean, on one hand, it's obviously upsetting if they try to distort the flag, because the flag, you know, again, understanding the origins of it, you have to understand that it was the only plebiscite that we've ever had as far as international universal plebiscite. I mean, there's been national meetings amongst the race in some places here and there, but there's never been an international plebiscite where we all come together to agree on a particular thing. And the only thing that can undo that is a follow-up meeting of the race internationally from all over to say, okay, well, we want to alter this or alter that. But when you take something that the race decided on at the only worldwide racial meeting we've ever had and say, we don't think this is pretty, we're going to flip the color this way and that way, then that's a desecration. That's a real disrespect to the nation and its origin. And it's not, people say that imitation is flattery, but that imitation is not flattery. That's disrespectful. And that's something that I have no respect for. I don't buy any of those types of products if the flag colors are upside down, if they added yellow or green or purple or any other kind of rainbow colors to the flag. I'm not buying it. I'm not dealing with it. And I encourage no one else to support that kind of nonsense either. This is not Skittles. We're not trying to make no rainbow flags here. This is about the red, black, and green as we collectively came together and decided for it to be used and how it's supposed to be used. And the ideals should reflect that of the gathering and those who came with a set of ideals. It's not a social equality flag, as Brother Akbar was pointing out, where you come together and kumbaya with white folks and that sort of thing. It's not, don't mean you have to hate and kill white people. That's not what the flag represents either. But it's not one about us trying to assimilate and join in. This is our racial identity. This is something that we fly for certain sets of reasons, particularly. And when great people like the Honorable Dr. Ben, who was an advocate of the red, black, and green, pass away, then it's a flag that we also fly half-mast and, give honor to him until his 40 days have passed. But this is how flags are properly used. And those who abuse it, now I will say there are times where people, they want to introduce, everyone has a way of seeing Garvey. The Christians deserve to see Garvey in the way they see him. Muslims and atheists, everyone else deserve the right to interpret Garvey as they wish. And so they, I know some elder Muslim women who see Garvey as he took his shahada. I personally don't agree, with it in the sense that that's what he did. He didn't say that he took that, and therefore I haven't seen anywhere where, I would agree with that. But to some extent, I give people a certain amount of right to claim Garvey because he is a hero. He's worthy of our embrace. But I don't let anybody just misrepresent Garvey either. So if people say that Garvey did this or said this and there's something he really didn't say or do, then I abhor something like that. But I give a little leeway sometimes to people who try to be creative when talking about Garvey, but no one catches that red, black, and green and bastardize it without catching hell from me. That's a disrespectful sign to any nation for you to take their flag and run it through the mud and do anything you want to it. So again, but in order to feel that way, you kind of have to understand the statehood. But yeah, another question.
Yeah, I have another question. What about those that are not intentionally trying to misinterpret, not to say, trying to narrow it down to just being a flag, because Marcus Garvey, his authenticity was very uncomparable to any other leader, out here. But what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of people that don't have this knowledge that you have about RBG. So they think that, waving the colors is being part of the UNIA. How do you feel about that? I feel like maybe we need to push more about the core of what Garvey stood for rather than everybody just dressing up in red, black, and green. I think there needs to be more knowledge about this being pushed so people know, because a lot of people out here, I think they would like to know what they're standing for. Some people don't know about RBG, but they want to be a part of it, but they don't understand the core of it.
Look at it the same way some people, like when the Malcolm X movie came out and everybody was wearing the X hats and they were trying to get the horn-rimmed glasses, and everybody who understood the truth of what he represented wanted some way to identify with him. Some people, during the Black Power, a movement, the Panthers are looking good with the fros and the jackets. Everybody want to wear that for a minute. They may not all have the same level of consciousness and understand what that symbolizes, but they know they like it and they want to identify with some kind of way. So I know there's some ignorance. We all have it or have had it at some point. And I'm somewhat, like I say, I'm understanding of the dynamic that produces that, but I try to impress upon folks a proper interpretation of it so that it's not abused and misused and exploited, and people make it mean anything they want. I know some people do the revolutionary but gangster, symbolism, or they want to say red, black, and the green, and I'm like, well, I mean, that's not what the intentions of the founders and pioneers who developed this implement of statehood had in mind. That we want to associate it with everything but what our aims and objects were and what our fight was. But again, to some extent, I tolerate it sometimes. Sometimes I think people are really abusing it. I have to voice some things. But yes, I agree that there has to be a serious campaign to enlighten. You can't really fault people for what they don't know. But once they know, if they continue to disrespect and kind of bastardize your statehood symbols, then you got to respond like any other patriot would. I don't see too many of us going down south and taking the red, white, and blue flag and wiping our behinds with it. Your rednecks would probably try to kill you. But anybody else, you take an Islamic Quran or a symbol and you trash that, what are people going to do about it? They're going to try to chop your head off. So I mean, in the same sense, we need to have, demand people respect our symbols. And, we don't have to be crazy and risk our lives all the time for it. But at the same time, be prepared to face some consequences to make sure that flag gets the respect that it deserves. And don't just surrender your symbols to anybody, any little group that pop up and claim that they represent the red, black, and green. They're going to have to go through some scrutiny. I'm not giving it away.
Definitely. Do you think that Garvey, its whole thing that he put forth being a lot of visionary, do you think that his visionary is possible at this time of age, being that we have a lot of people that are unconscious to what is very important to us, not race culture?
Queen Hatshepsut,
your phone
is distorted.
I'm sorry.
Your phone sounds distorted.
Yeah, your voice kind of came in.
Can you hear me now?
I didn't.
No, distorted.
Same thing.
Okay, well, look, I'll take over till she get her phone going. Now, what I want to say, you don't see no an American flag when you desecrate it, it's against the law. You can be punished. The Russian flag could be punished. Any flag in the world, if you desecrate them with nations, you are punished. If burning flags and all that stuff they made it illegal. If they catch you burning a flag, you're going to jail. And you may get beat by the police. Who knows? Whatever. See what happened to the police. You see maybe a white boy may get away with burning the flag, but they liable to kill a black man for waving the flag. They kill him just for being black. But what I want to say is those who are out here misrepresenting the flag, and they got the flag, all these different colors, they done took the stripes and made them small, and they done mixed them up. The color's not even in sequence and everything. They're setting a precedent for others to come and desecrate the flag, and there's no meaning that they don't even know, most likely. They don't know the meaning, because if they knew the meaning, they would be in the UNIA trying to push, us to nationhood. But what's happening is they're setting the precedent for anybody to come along and do what they want to do with the flag. Because it seems that we have no love for what is ours, and we don't want to protect it. We don't want to do what we have to do. And this is what has us still in bondage. Now, I'm telling you now, and I don't ever see it, but if I see a red, black, and green with some rainbow colors around it, I'm going to jail. You know what I'm saying? Because they're making their homo to take the flag. You know what I'm saying? They're going to be flying it. Black, homosexual, so-called nationalists and everything, because they're in here. There are plenty in the movement. I mean, I've argued with people on Facebook. They telling me that Martin Luther King had a I said Martin Luther King has nothing to do with the nationalistic movement. Yeah, he talked good about Garvey, but these are Negroes who wanted to coexist with the white people, and you see where that has gotten us today. Black people getting killed like it ain't nothing. This is a very important day because this is the first time I ever seen the Southern Christian Leadership Conference leader come out and tell black people to arm themselves against the police.
Yeah, that was a Robert F. Williams kind of moment.
Yeah. I mean, this is historical. I don't know if he's doing it for press or whatever, but, you know, when the Southern Leadership Conference is telling black people to arm themselves because they were telling you, look, lay in the ground, lay down and get beat and fire hose and dogs biting you and, you know, and all that type of stuff. I mean, throw yourself to the mercy of the beast just so you could go in these restaurants and get rid of yours, just so you can go in this hotel and elect yours, they're going now, just so you can go into all his businesses, his sport industry, give up your sports team, give up everything. Black owned 156 nationwide before integration. When integration came in, Negroes were so snotty nosed and teary eyes, and they wanted to be with this white devil so bad because the white devil played this trick on them that you ain't no good and you ain't nothing, and they figured that if you go to the whites, and it even lasted until my mother, who died in 2006, I'm going to the shop right in the white neighborhood because the food up there is better. I was like, they got the same food in this shop right down here. But in her mind, it was better. You know, and this is a disease that we had that was created by them. I call it psychological, reverse psychology on you to make you want to be with them and make you want to partake in their stuff. Brother Kamal, go ahead. The mic is yours.
And Sister Hatshepsut is back.
Yeah, is your phone working right now?
Okay. Yeah, were you were asking a question? I wanted to give you the opportunity to finish it because we couldn't hear you. I thought you were actually Akbar for a minute. Your voice sounds so deep with that distortion.
My apologies. It's not me. It's the phone company. I don't know. But, yes, my question was, man, you know, everything that Marcus Garvey stood for, you know, was definitely a powerful movement that was definitely in the play back in the early 1920s. You know, he had over 700 branches in like over 38 states. But my question was, do you think that King Marcus Garvey, do you think that his idea would work right now, being as though, you know, we have so many unconscious people, you know, and many unconscious people, they trapped in their egos, you know, they trapped out through their lives. They will quickly tell you, you know, who they are, their occupation, how their body look, you know, we're like really lost as people, you know, whatever else they identify themselves with, you know, it may appear to evolve because they think of themselves, you know, as being an immortal soul or living spirit, whatever, you know, the case may be. Do you think we can get it done with all this going on now, the same vision that Marcus Garvey had?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Well, you know, there are many who question that. I mean, of course, Mr. Garvey, even throughout his years as President General, realized there were times to adjust strategy into a new epic or new wave of planning, you know, for different phases of the movement's growth toward its aims and, you know, meeting its aims and objects. And so there's some strategic changes, but, you know, we just use new methods to accomplish old goals. You know, the same ideals exist. You know, self-determination don't change. And when it comes to, you know, the situation that we find ourselves in, it really is not much different from the situation Mr. Garvey found himself in. I mean, he dealt with a bunch of people who were not too far up from slavery. You know, a bunch of people who were being, you know, lynched and murdered. You know, just like we are getting murdered, you know, en masse by cops, and seemed like there's nothing we can do about it. You know, there was a lot of, you know, ignorance as to what our identity was, and people trying to escape. You know, the situation was largely the same. And really, if we retrace and examine what he actually did, the gospel is still the same, you know, needs to teach us to love ourselves is still there. You know, people who the light skin, dark skin dynamic is, still the same. I mean, everything is, almost went backwards. To, we had advanced to some extent, and then we flip-flopped, and then we advanced, and then we flip-flopped. So the ebb and flow is still the same. But I think if, we were to look at how he popularized certain ideals, we would probably even find that we have an easier opportunity if we have that unity and uniformity, like you mentioned, despite the egos of some Negroes, because many people have a love of power and don't properly exercise the power of love, and because of that, they want to use that I'm the boss thing to try to undermine other people, and they get jealous. I've seen some more YouTube fights amongst the leadership of the nationalist community that you can't conceive of possibly finding that same level of unity with that sort of nonsense going on over ridiculous topics and issues. People almost act like the very people they say they're not acting like, and I don't want to throw the word out there, but a bunch of people acting like punks half the time, and sissies, arguing over nothing, and it's really disgraceful, the situation we find ourselves in. But Mr. Garvey came on the scene. He said the same thing, that there's no leaders amongst the race today, that all these so-called leaders have sold you up the river, and you need a new form of leadership and a new example. And he brought it and introduced it, and the people followed him. They saw not only him speaking, but when he spoke, he was giving a report on what he had just did. His was a work, in progress. So, when you see the ships in the factories, you don't have to question whether his philosophy works. You see it works. You have people who were unemployed who are now working. People who are doing constructive things, and talking about way back in 1920, we had ships and was putting together an air fleet. We don't have that today. I mean, just the level of thinking that required that sort of mobilizing. The level of planning. With people who really had, hell. It's a funny thing. I'll say this. If you look at the census in 1920, I might even post that on Facebook for those who care to see it. But in the census of 1920, I remember looking at where Mr. Garvey lives. You have on that whole block where he lived, one person was a domestic worker, another one was had a big time job as a shoe shine at the big hotel. Another one was a laborer, another one was a laborer, another one was a domestic, and some other job. And then he was one of the next to the last that said president of a steamship company. but to see how everybody around him, he stayed amongst the people, how he was humble. And, when he first came to Harlem, he was living in a hallway of a rooming house with like 20 people in a 3-bedroom house. He did what he had to do to make things happen. He had heart. He didn't have the emails and the cell phones and all these text blasts and stuff that people have today to organize, but he had heart, with that telegram machine and some envelopes and some stamps. He performed miracles, so if he can do it, and we had the example and a perfect model, not just a theory, but a model of success, then we would be actually untrue and dishonest to all that he represented if we say we can't do it. Now, he came to show us what we could do and what must be done. What man has done, man can do. So to say we can't do it is to say, that we're not followers, in fact, of that very philosophy that we're advocating. So, I absolutely agree. Think that we know that we can do everything that was done, but I think we need to really stick to the plan and stop being as adventurous as some of us like to be, thinking we can do things a little differently and change up some stuff. Every time we change, we go backwards. I say go back to the source, follow the plan, and, honor the man by following the plan.
Definitely. But being as though the times were different, we didn't have in the 1920s people popping mollies and strippers and, sex is very easy to get. We didn't have video games, like you said, and technology. So it's like, how can you even compare what was done back then to what is done now? They got satellites and everything else in the sky.
Well, yeah, I agree. There's more in this information age that we're in. We're more inundated than we were with, with that kind of negativity, with the games, with the TV with the all the empires and scandals and homosexuality, everything is running rampant because they inundating us every day. I mean, even if you are with your children all at home, the minute they go to school, they inundated with all that crap. The same when they turn the TV on at night. That's what they're watching. The only thing you can watch is all this junk. So, but I also feel that just as all that kind of junk is there, we can also use the same technology to undo that junk. Just like I know some people have, I think Brother Sonetta TV or whatever. There's different ways, internet, radio, et cetera, we can use to kind of reverse the curse and flip the script back on the folks who are using technology against us. We can use, as Mr. Garvey said, science by excellence to our advantage to, educate us on another set of morals and principles and ideals and, kind of, change that dynamic. It may be a hard task to do, but, again, it's a fight that, we can win. If they can do it, we can do better. And,
Black power, brother. You all right. Black power.
Well, I want to say this. In the time of Marcus Garvey, don't think that Negroes ain't had no drugs. Negroes had alcohol. Drugs ain't nothing new. Drugs is just not entered into the world. Mr. Garvey said that if the Negro don't be careful, he's going to drink all the poisons of Western society and die from the effect. So he already knew that it was wretched Negroes. He also said that the Negroes, that all the Negroes in America are not that would want to be that he would want to take with him to Africa, because there's bad Negroes here and they will be bad over there. See, this wasn't you have some noise in your background. This wasn't a thing to take every Negro, because we knew that we're going to have to cast off some of these Negroes, because they're never going to change. So they're going to have to remain with the beast until the beast just kills them off, because this is what is happening. You know what I'm saying? To this day, the Negroes that wanted to remain with the beast is killing us off. We got more black children dying from mothers going in and paying the white man to take their children out of their womb and kill them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, abortions, like the brother mentioned the eugenics earlier. This eugenics thing has grown. When I estimated about 3 years ago, I did all the math and everything. It took me about 3 months to get all this information together. And I came out that 27,000 black people a week, children, are being murdered. And this was like 3, maybe even 5 years ago. I know it's more because it doesn't do anything but increase. Just like the ignorance of the Negro has increased. So this thing increases because of population control. They want to keep the numbers of Negroes down because their numbers can never catch up, because their birth rate is in the negative. All this stuff about they're more than us stuff, they're the minority in the world. We're not the minority in the world. We're the majority of people in the world. And if you want to say that, oh, no, the Chinese, no, it's black Asians over in Asia. You know what I'm saying? It's black people all throughout the Pacific Islands here in Americas, in Brazil, in India. Black people are all on the face of this earth almost everywhere you go. You're going to run into somebody black. So, fear is to tell them, I'm not going to try what Marcus Garvey tried. And there's the Negroes with ships. I know a brother, he passed away now, named Don Barton. Used to be down here in Detroit, used to own Barton's Cablevision, sold it to Comcast, and instead of him getting ships to take black people away from this, he brought casino ships for people to come spend their money so he could make more. You know what I'm saying? So we have the will to do it. We have the money to do it. Actually, we should be doing it better than Garvey right now with all the technology and all the stuff we have in modern. He was working with.
So I just wanted to add to your comment that the sister kind of pointed out the rampant homosexuality and perversions that we see today. But I was going to say too that the Harlem Renaissance, which Garvey was organizing us to instill race pride and family and that sort of thing. There was also a flaming homosexual movement that was growing back in the 20s. And people like what's his name? Well, I was thinking about Langston Hughes, but you got people like Zora Neale Hurston. I mean, some of these people were like Zora Neale. She got her start through the Negro world, writing in the newspaper when she was a poet at Howard. But after she probably had her fifth divorce from her fifth husband, or however many she had, she started, dating women, and she came out against Mr. Garvey. But a lot of, that flaming, homosexuality amongst the musician and artists was pretty rampant back in that time too. But they put it in check. Mr. Garvey didn't tolerate any of that kind of foolishness, and people of that time fought against it. Even though now, again, we can see, there's been a winning over of sorts from, the media blasting it. But just as the, media blasts to us, we can blast back at them and take over our own media, social media, or any other kind of way to, kind of regain the moral fiber of our race and, kind of restore some of our values. But we just got to have the will to do it. They're not. And I'll say this too. I'm of the opinion that Mr. Garvey taught that nobody is greater than us. That's why, to some extent, we can't blame. We can blame white folks for what they've done, but they can't stop us. They're not strong enough. They're not superior to us to be able to stop us. Only one can stop us is us. And so once we organize and unite, they're finished. If they try to oppress us or try to, fight against us, they're through. Not only we outnumber them, but we are the greatest, people on the planet. So, I don't never concede nothing to nobody. Just like a basketball game, I'm not going to beg my opponent to stop scoring points. I'm going to tell them bring it. And I'm just going to tighten my team up, pass the ball, communicate, do what we got to do, D up, and we're going to take it to them. But, yeah, I ain't scared of nobody. I'm not daunted by any odds or any numbers or anything like that. I've seen, miracles perform. I'm a Garvey guy. So, anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Can I ask one more question? It's income tax time, and I've seen a lot of RBG guys, with a lot of white women, a lot of fat white women. So how do you feel about these brothers out here repping RBG, with all these European women on their elbow?
Yeah, well, it's certainly antithetical to what the red, black, and green represents. The UNIA was and is clearly in promotion of black families and black procreation and, occupying the earth and plentifully filling it with our people. They're not about any integrations on any level, any kind of mongrelization. We don't support in any way. If people are of mixed ancestry and they declare themselves black, we welcome them into our fold. They fit that image, but we don't, like I said, we don't support that mixed marriage thing. In fact, you can join if you're married. You can join the UNIA if you're married to someone of alien race, but you can't be an officer in the UNIA and take any office if you're married to someone of an alien race. And primarily the reason for that is your loyalty will be divided. And when it comes to the creed of the UNIA, which is called African fundamentalism, Mr. Garvey instructed us that the order of our priorities should be first loyalty is to our God, then to our families, and to our nation. So if you're loyal to your family and your family is not of your race, then you automatically have disloyalty to the race. Some kind of racial war broke out, and you're married to a white woman. Who you going to defend and risk your life for? What you going to be doing? Whose side you going to be on? So it's kind of a conflict of interest to have a person as an officer in the association also have an allegiance to someone of an alien race when that loyalty first must be to their family. So anyway, we by no means endorse that then nor now. And so that's to have the red, black, and green. That's an insult, and people who do that ought to be pulled up on that whenever possible. I don't know why they even want to fly the red or wear the red, black, and green, but some alien on their arm is kind of, I would think the alien would be uncomfortable with that. I guess they all are ignorant.
Indeed, brother, indeed.
And my brother, Malcolm X, that I don't even want to mention the Negro's name that wrote that song, Pick Up Your Thing. But he missed when Malcolm said, don't lift every voice and sing, lift every fist and swing.
Every fist and swing. That's right.
He was mocking because Malcolm came up with the universal Ethiopian anthem. His dad was a UNIA operative. His mother was a UNIA operative. So he came up hearing the songs about taking back Africa, planting your flag, and that's where the nationalistic fervor in Malcolm X was. That's why he got in trouble with the Nation of Islam, was trying to stay more into a religious type thing. Because you see the Nation of Islam has been operating for, how long? Since 1930? And you can see that they've not been able to even get an island yet. You know what I'm saying? They're not really talking about nationalistic, getting the country. And I mean, in their paper, they asked for a couple of states, and this is what the Muslim want, and all that, because I was in the nation. So the thing is that's what got Malcolm in trouble, his wanting and desire to build a black unity across the globe. And then the nation wasn't even thinking like that at that particular time. Matter of fact, the nation had less than 200, maybe 300 members when Malcolm X joined. And Malcolm X went all across the country, building Nation of Islams everywhere. Nobody wants to talk about it. Even the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was a lieutenant in the UNIA.
Yeah.
But he, says a couple good things in the book about, Marcus Garvey. All of them do. But they try to sever their relationship with him by not saying. Minister Farrakhan, when he first came out, in the 50th anniversary of the UNIA, he was the guest speaker. We brought him back out. They had their meetings in the UNIA that I'm in Philadelphia. So Dr. Khaled been there. All the people that you see on Facebook, Dr. Ben, Don Henry Clark, Leonard Jeffries. I mean, you could keep on going. They all been in that building. Even Malcolm himself was in the building. Because Malcolm had UNIA members, UNIA around him, telling him different things. Because, see, it was the UNIA at that time, when Malcolm was around, it was going through this and that. They had the brother talking about, changing the name from Negro to African. What was his name again? At the ATM. Cooks, Carlos Cooks. Yeah. Then you have these people. Got people, but they was Carlos Cooks was giving advice. Carlos Cooks was holding down the red, black, and green still because we had a military, type fervor of brothers that wanted to be militarily ready. Then we had the ones that wanted to be into, their thing, preaching and talking and giving speeches and all that stuff. Yeah. And then we brothers that actually went into Africa and established the UNIA in Liberia and Monrovia and built the school, built the farm, built the hospital. It's a lot of stuff that you don't know that's on the books. And then W.E.B. Du Bois, one of the most wretched Negroes that ever faced the earth, as far as I'm concerned. Garvey said he was a little bit Irish, a little bit Scottish. The Negro was totally confused, but he never had a plan. He was from here to there, from socialism, communism to, civil rights. And he didn't know what he wanted to do. And then the crazy part about it, at the end, he ends up in Africa. After he was saying Garvey shouldn't be trying to take him. That's the thing I keep for people. He was the best we ever had. The Negro did the first study that white people still use today on Negroes that white people do to study you in Philadelphia. The Negro.
Yeah. We can talk all. I was gonna say we can talk all day about that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing is that we're calling everybody who really believes in this red, black, and green back to Garveyism, because that's what the red, black, and green is, a part of the Garveyism. It's not a part of all this other stuff. We're calling you back to the UNIA. Brother Kamal organizer. You can find him on Facebook. You can always find him. You can call me if you want to get in contact with him. Come back home. Stop trying to create something, and you have not in 100 years been able to even do a fraction of what Garvey did for our people. Yeah. Come back home. Don't let these people fool you out here. I'm telling you. Don't let none of these fools out here that don't have no program, don't have no constitution. We have a constitution to put to a country. We have this. We have all the ingredients that we need to build our own nation, because we are not going to be able to stay here with this white man. You see that every day. It's almost no day you could turn on the TV. Blacks killing blacks because they're depressed, or they trying to get money, because they're going to sell drugs and this and that, because the white man will cut you off from jobs, and even the job that you have now can't even suffice you, because the prices of everything is so sky high. You got to at least be making at least almost $1,000 a week to be living right. You know what I'm saying? So the thing is we got to bring ourselves back home. We got to build our own thing. We got to step up to the mic and stop trying to recreate something that you've seen the governments put all their forces together to come after. Other than that, you're playing a game with yourself, and you're not real. You're not real about nation building. You're not real about freeing our people. You're just a coward that has a stigmatism because you're scared of the white man. We can't do this. We can't do that. That's the mind of a slave.
Well, on top of that, I want to add, too, those who use the red, black, and green but not living up to the principles it represents, they're actually punks and cowards on another level. Hold on one sec. Yeah, because on top of that, they're, instead of building a movement of their own and developing, new symbols, they want to try to co-opt somebody else's movement. They want to kind of try to snatch something that someone else had built and then try to pretend like, that's their symbol, like, that's their, they want to take credit for those accomplishments and saying that they're doing the same thing. But that's dishonesty. That's not living up to what the founders of the red, black, and green intended it for. So if you're going to use it for ill-gotten purposes, we'll forewarn you now that it's not going to work out well for you. You're never going to enjoy the success you think you're going to enjoy until you do right by it. And, uniformity also leads to unification sometimes. And when a lot of people do the same thing the same kind of way and can coordinate on that level, all having solidarity, the same anthem, same flag, the same this, same that, it scares the hell out of your enemies. When they see that you can, like a parade that marches by all in step, lockstep, all on the same rhythm, can actually execute, a same maneuver or plan at the same time. That scares the hell out of the enemies because they know you can do that. There's a whole lot more you can do together, united as one body. And, so much power in just following the game plan as was written. I always tell people that, Mr. Garvey, just like a master chess player on the chessboard, he was one who found a way uniquely for us to win this game in 3-4 moves, a guaranteed checkmate. All we had to do was follow the plan. He made the sacrifice, took the biggest piece off the board, but he just told us to follow the plan, stick to the plan, and there's no way they can win, and you got this thing. And as soon as he made the big sacrifice and left, he'll be all scurrying and scared. We questioning the plan. Now we running this way and that way from pillar to post, don't know what to do. And now we about to lose what we have already won. What we have, just follow the plan. Just stop thinking you know everything and smarter than everybody. Your way hasn't got you nowhere closer to where Mr. Garvey's philosophy got us. And that's the only, thing you can use, philosophy for, is to tell how successful your philosophy is your reality. Did you produce anything with your philosophy? And if your philosophy not working, why not try one that has worked, that does work, that, can work once again if we properly exercise it. So, philosophy is, Mr. Gar, I think it was Malcolm X who said that you change your philosophy, you're going to change your thoughts and your thinking pattern. And once you change your thinking pattern, you change your attitude. When you change your attitude, you'll change your behavior. And once you change your behavior, you've got results. But the philosophy is what we need to unify around. And the philosophy is set on a certain worldview, a set of principles and ideals that will accomplish a certain end if we follow it and exercise integrity, et cetera. So anyway, I think I've kind of did that point. Were you about to say something, Sister Shepsut?
No, I'm really learning a lot just listening to you, my brother. I mean, because I'm not going to sit here and lie. I don't know everything about RBG, and for you to come on the show, it's really enlightened me about, the Marcus Garvey movement and, what the core of it is, instead of a lot of other things, and I really appreciate that. And Brother Akbar, you too. Woo, you on fire today. You put a lot of light on the side of my head because you had me say, what? Because there's a lot of things going on in the world that I think that needs to be exposed more. And, people like us, we just need to keep pushing and keep awakening up as many people as possible and let them know that, where we come from, and just let them know that we didn't do this. Our ancestors ain't do this just for nothing. We out here. And white supremacists know who we are, So if they know who we are, I'm pretty sure it's a must that you must know who you are. Because once you know who you are, there's no fear.
Yeah. Well, we do know from our history in the Garveyism that it was people ready to die and kill if they had to protect the red, black, and green. Garvey had built so much love and fervor and pride in the Negro's mind, the movement became the new Negro because the old Negro used to look at the white man's feet. I mean, he was trained from slavery not even to look in the white man's eyes. But by the time Garvey got finished with them and building them up, they can look the white man right straight in his beady, devilish eyes. And they didn't like that. A Negro was supposed to be an undercast. And not standing up to the beast, but all these soldiers that came back to America after World War I, getting lynched in their uniforms, being spit upon by the same white people that they went and fought for and to get white supremacy a space in the world, to now every single war when the Negroes come back, even to the day, the veterans are treated like shit. They can't find jobs. They can't find housing. In the city of Philadelphia, so many homeless veterans living on the streets. And they've been to fight and sacrifice their body, their soul, and everything for this bastard-ass country. And we won't do it for ourselves. So this is crazy. When you will go fight for another people to be on top, and you done help them control the whole world, to rule the world, and you haven't even took one piece of the booty of war for yourself. You are a slave. And Garvey was getting us out of that mentality and telling us to stand up and be men of the world. Stand up. You are a man just like they are men. You are as good as they are, but better. Because you went through all this. You went through all that. You went through things that people in this world can't even imagine going through as a melanated person. So what we have to do is, and I think Astro Black is on the station. Was Astro Black, is you here? I seen a number. No, that might not be Astro. We have a caller online. I just let somebody in, and they maybe don't want to speak. I don't think it was Astro then, because Astro likes to talk. He likes to get his word in there. That was Astro. Yeah, Brother Akbar, I'm here. But it had a similar number to his. But, we will always have Brother Kamal on this show to give you the information that you need to get about Garveyism. He is a Garvey scholar. And we also have another brother named Cimarron, who he introduced me to, who've been studying for years, who went back, and they're not just taking the white man's word. They're going and doing their research. They're doing the field work and everything to bring this information to you. Because if you listen to the white man, he'll tell you Garvey was a failure. Garvey was going to kill himself and commit suicide. And Garvey died from reading the newspaper. All these stories to me is fictitious stories, what happened to Marcus Garvey. But
they got to say that. They got to say that so you
believe
don't wind up acting, so you don't become the next Marcus Garvey. They figure they call him a failure. You look somewhere else. You look for Dr. King or somebody else's example. Well, imagine white folks telling him a failure after all the millions of dollars they spent, the 7 different agencies they directed to follow and try to sabotage them, and throwing ships in the metal objects in the ship's engines, and causing all kinds of havoc, and so much ridiculous stuff. Even agents trying to deliberately send out a fraudulent mail to people in order to get him set up. It was so much stuff going on, and I mean millions of dollars to anybody who's a failure. You don't have to try to set up or sabotage them. They'll fail on their own. If they're inferior, they'll fail. Obviously, you know that they got something for you, and that it's almost, it was so many small areas where things went a little differently. UNIA would have been so far advanced. The African people of the world would have been independent far faster, longer, and more thoroughly. And today, the problem, like you mentioned, was the mentality. Marcus Garvey once said, and Bob Marley later quoted, that you got to emancipate yourself from mental slavery, because while others can free your body, none but ourselves can free our mind. And many of us were freed, or we think we were freed, by a white man's hospitality. He put that emancipation procrastination out there, and all of a sudden we's free. And then he actually put us through an era he called Reconstruction, where he reconstructed slavery under a different name instead of pretenses and act like it wasn't. And we living through that same crap today. We just as much enslaved then through the prison system as we were, back, 100 plus years ago. So it's like the same, trials are always there. But the mentality, the problem with this slave mentality that many of us have is we don't know we have it. We think we're free. We think we actually have something. Even those amongst us who are culturally and religiously nationalistic, we a lot of times are still enslaved. I mean, we don't have the right philosophy. And when you look at, a philosophy, when people say what we lost in Africa, they say we lost our language, our culture, our religion, all this. Okay, we lost all that. You're absolutely right. But what else did we lose? We lost our ability to think a certain kind of way, to feel a certain kind of way. We lost our sense of racial dignity and destiny. We don't have a sense of racial destiny anymore, the sense of we're all one universal African family. We don't have that sense that we should have pride in our racial heritage and identity. A lot of us are ashamed. No one that had nothing to do with, I ain't no African, I ain't know this, I ain't know that. And that's because of what we've been told about us in our, being savages and all this sort of stuff. We really begin to hate ourselves because other people put us in this certain mindset. So, people in that mindset oftentimes don't know that they're in that mindset. They think they're actually doing something constructive and actually doing something counterproductive and not know it. So you need to have a certain philosophy to change your condition. And if we don't have that philosophy, even though we have a religious program that is nationalistic, we can still be tricked into following some other people's philosophy. In every religion people always say that religion is the most important thing in the world to people, but it's not really. Philosophy trumps religion, even when people don't think it does. Because even within the same religion, you got people with different philosophies. But, within the same religion, you got different denominations. You got within one church, you might have 20 different people who have different interpretations of a book, because it's the interpretation that regulates your religious philosophy. And if you have a racial philosophy that says race first, even within a religion, you can adopt certain articles of faith and disregard others because they all contradict themselves. But if you have the race first philosophy, you can transform and transcend the shortcomings of any religion, and you'll maintain a certain attitude. Within the UNIA, you had the Rasta, you had the Nation of Islam, you had the Moorish Science, you had people of all kinds of faith now and then, one page. You were working collectively to accomplish one universal goal, and that was, was running smooth as butter. And today, it's harder and harder to see that, because I don't look at you as my brother, because you're not my religious brother, or you're not, my brother by faith. Because the first faith is now into this religion, and not necessarily faith in ourselves and faith in our racial needs and accomplishments, that we can, work together and do this thing and that thing. So, getting back to the philosophy, restoring a philosophy of race first in this world, it's everything. We kind of undercut it sometimes because we want to push how conscious we are of ancient Kemet. But, sometimes we got to get down to the brass tactics, and sometimes it starts just with us loving our race. And, the simplest thing, the first, the second aim of the UNIA is promote the spirit of pride and love. Always overlooked, but it's so, so, so important. If we just did that, it's hard to lead people if you can't feed people. If you don't come together on the basic level and just exercise love, ask someone how they doing and actually wait for an answer. And dialogue with them. Somebody, Elder Garvey once told me that organizing is one person at a time. Everybody wants to go out there and organize the race, and they never will because they're not thinking one person at a time. And once you really develop a relationship and understanding with someone, move on to the next person, and that person, if you plant thoroughly certain ideas, will go on and continue the same work as well, and we'll start to build quality, which will lead to the quantity. But first starting with one person. With one person you can really ground with and build and work with, and the rest is over. I mean, it's done. But people who kind of want to get it all and go out there and think that Garvey just gave speeches and people just ran because he gave speeches, there's so much more to it. And certainly the people who helped him build a movement. I mean, we couldn't even scratch the surface if I started talking about the Henrietta Davises and the William Levan Sherrills and the James Robert Stewart. By the way, James Stewart is the only successor to Garvey, even though many people say he was forerunner and he was John the Baptist. Sometimes they use that in a less respectful way than they ought to. That's to say that he was kind of a lesser prophet who was leading you to a greater prophet, which is their leader, and therefore you all should follow their leader because, Garvey was just a John the Baptist leading up to them. Even though, they call him a forerunner, he kind of was more of a outrunner, I would say, or outperformer, or outthinker, outdoer, and out everything to people who never accomplished even a modicum of what he accomplished. So, I don't let people get away with that, but so more often, if they mean it, that he set the precedent and inspired people, then I can say, yes, he was a forerunner in that sense. But he only had one successor, and that successor was James Robert Stewart, who was the successor in the foundation that he established, which is the UNIA. The UNIA is it. He built his philosophy and designed a program to materialize his vision and philosophy and to practice that philosophy. So that's it. The driving manual is the philosophy and opinions and the course of African philosophy. The actual vehicle is the UNIA. One works with the other. It's hand and foot. So, parallel movements are great. Outgrowths of the UNIA are great. Hopefully they can come back to the source and stay connected. I don't try to tell people not to practice this religion or that ideology. There's maybe some value in there for them, but keep the philosophy the same and, stay with the program. And, we can bring folks back home, just because really that's what Europeans are doing with this European Union. They're trying to resurrect Rome. They want one European empire, one Western empire. The same thing with Asia. They're trying to come together and put blocks together. Same thing. Some folks in Africa are starting certain problems and challenges we facing with the African Union. But that's the idea, is to set up an African world empire, a big racial hierarchy by which we can govern our own affairs and have our own Africa towns throughout the world. We can send goods and products made by us, all across the globe. Africans can take over the whole world economy if we organize properly and use the science and technology that we built over here in this U.S., that we designed in the U.S. and could get credit for most of our patents and designs. If we just use what we have, and the same people that built the pyramids and advanced sciences and spread them across the globe, should be using them now for the benefit back home as well as abroad. But we're not using that. We're still relying on other people to give us medicine and food in the most bountiful land on the planet, where all the resources of the world are centered. Just the Congo alone has 80% of the world's coltan, which they need to make most of their modern electronic equipment. And I mean, if this is where everything is, we can just cut the borders down, spark an industrial technological revolution, and the whole world economy is going to be basically shut out and waiting at our doorstep to buy finished products and not raw materials anymore. I mean, and people know this. That's why there's so many people trying to invade and take over Africa right now. And, as much as people try to downgrade what Africa is and marginalize and all disease, y'all don't want to go there. You can't get them out of there. They want to invade, Asia, sending so many people over there. And, it's hard for us over here to be telling Asians that, our African brothers, that we need to run the Asians out before they come over there and take over some of our land, when we can't even run the Asian out of our community over here who's exploiting us economically in our neighborhood. Mama San runs your neighborhood. The nail salon lady runs your neighborhood. She controls your economy. The liquor stores ran by the Asian community. Everybody, is dependent upon these institutions to eat. And that's sad. Like, we can't make our own rice and noodles. I mean, what's going on with us? We that disorganized. We just lost sight of the philosophy which guides all of our actions and decisions. So anyway, don't let me talk too much. The truth, doctor.
I can tell you one thing. The beast, the white beast, is forcing you back into, this is a good thing. I'm not mad at him. But the beast is forcing you back to go for self because you have outlived your usefulness. He got his drones, he got his mechanized stuff, but you see, that's not really working no more. So you might revisit Negroes as, cannon, what they call it, when you stand up in front of the cannon and stuff, cannon fodder.
Yeah, cannon fodder.
And you were being used for a pawn. I mean, a peon and a pawn, for the white man's pleasure. And when are we going to stand up and say no? We can't stop dying for them when we're not even willing to die for our own cause. This, to me, is one of the sickest things that I can think of, when you will dive in front of a running train to save a white man, but you won't even save your own self. This is madness.
Yeah.
And I think I have two callers in. A couple of them, I think they don't want to talk. But let me try to see if they want to say something. Caller 9561 at the end of the number. If you want to say something, I'm about to let you in. Do you have a comment? 9561, starting with the area code 347. Okay, this caller doesn't have anything to contribute to the show tonight. Let me check this other caller here. Yes, caller with 334 area code. Do you have a comment? Or do you like to ask a question? Okay, we silent caller. They're learning tonight. I don't blame them, because most people don't know this history, and they've been led astray. And I'm telling you this, if the people that's out here so-called leading you to their DVDs or their books or any of these other things, and they don't have a program behind it, run for the hills, because you're being taken, because if you don't have a program behind what you're doing, then you're deceiving the people. You're just taking their money and producing nothing. You talking about you want to do this for the people, do for the people, but you don't see nothing. A Negro can't seem to do anything unless he gets a grant from the white man himself. He wants to go and get grants and all this stuff and everything. How you going to go to the beast and get grants to build your nation? He's not going to give you grants to build your own nation. You got to take from the pennies. People with Garvey time had nickels and pennies and dollars. They didn't have the money we got today. See, Negroes spend $1 quicker than you can blink your eye. The candy costs $1 now. You know what I'm saying? When I was a little boy, you can buy 2 bags of candy for a nickel. You know what I'm saying? So now we have the power to free ourselves even more than the people in the past. But the fear, the Negroes shaking in their boots, ready to kill each other at the drop of a dime, ready to abuse their women, ready to abuse their children, ready to abuse themselves to stay here with the white man because you're scared to go for yourself. And Booker T. Washington, he said back in the day that the Negro has put working in the dirt with something very low. But you can't build a nation if you don't start from the dirt. Everything starts from the dirt. The dirt feeds us. The dirt, we get our trees, we get our bricks, we get everything from the dirt, from the earth. So first of all, we're going to have to learn how to go back to the earth, because in them times 85% of the Negro population in America was in agriculture. Now they got mechanized farms. They got chicken plants. They're growing food so unhealthy that people are dying off. In the Negro neighborhoods, we eating the slave food still, and all these oils and concentrated this and concentrated that. You got high blood pressure, hypertension, heart disease, everything, prostate problems. They didn't hear about no prostate stuff back in the day. This stuff is all coming from what we eat. And we cannot smell it. Garvey told us we're going to die from the poison of Western empires. And I see it happening right in front of our eyes. Not just the shooting down of our youth, not just the abortions of our babies, but the food you eat, the air you smell, the water you drink is all poison because this beast does not know how to live in harmony with nature. And now he has you so far away from nature that when you go near a plant, you start coughing and sneezing and carrying on. Talking about you got hay fever. That's how far you've been removed from the earth. You are not in harmony with the earth of what we need to do. Stop playing. Stop following these false leaders, these preachers in the church, these people taking your money in the mosque. They don't even have a job for you. And you go and giving your money, unless you're an usher in the church carrying the money bucket, and they watching you hard with that. Make sure you don't stick your hand in it. I went to this church to visit these people for a holiday program they was having. They invited me. And I'm telling you, I've never seen a collection plates with a long pole on it. They take the pole, this thing must have been about 10, 15 foot long, and they don't want nobody to touch this thing but them because they scared somebody's going to grab a dollar, a nickel, or a quarter out of there or whatever. And they pass this thing all the way down the aisles and the pews and stuff. I was like, this is ridiculous, you know? So our people have been used to hearing the preacher talk a good thing and beautiful speakers, and they can speak and then make you feel good for that hour or two or three, whatever they speaking. But then when you come out of there, there's nothing. There's no sustenance. They'll tell you they building nations. They'll tell you they got chapters in Tanzania. They'll tell you they got this here and that there and this here. Constantly taking the money of the people and not producing anything. And anybody you see that profess Garveyism, and they're taking your money and they're spending your money and you don't see nothing in return, no businesses, no nothing going up, run, because they're not a real Garveyite. Because a Garveyite is going to go by the Constitution. They're going to go by the principles that Marcus Garvey set up, because if you take care of the movement, it will ultimately take care of all the people. That's what it was designed for. And we are getting to the end. As a matter of fact, we're past the end, and my queen is calling, you know. And it's time for us to chime out tonight, and I want Brother Paul to give us information up. And I want Queen Hatshepsut to bless out good night. So, Brother Kamal, give your information, and Queen Hatshepsut, take us out of here.
Okay. Well, I can be contacted on Facebook. My name is Moriama Kamal. That's MWARIAMA. Last name KAMAU. Email MWARIAMA1@AOL.com, or you can contact me in the States at 202-256-6380. And I just close, telling everyone that Mr. Garvey is without fail the greatest leader we've ever produced. He's the master architect and chief engineer of the most comprehensive blueprint for black power ever designed and constructed. He's the standard bearer of success who was blessed to do more with less. And if you begin to examine his philosophy and his program, you will begin to understand the world much better and will be more prepared to handle all the challenges we face as a race and help unify your community for our independence and greater control of our destiny. Thank you, Queen Hatshepsut.
Like Brother Akbar was saying, there's a lot of false brothers and sisters, not just brothers, also sisters out here, because I've done seen some things very explicit from some sisters claiming to be RBG. But like Brother Akbar said, if there's no program behind what they're doing, like you said, these people, they taking people's money and you don't see anything productive in the community, such as a business or even trying to give back to the community, like you said, run, because there's a lot of that going on, just as there is a lot of money schemes. And it's so disrespectful and ignorant that people would take something that is so great, that would take us so far, and drag it in the dirt like that. So I just want y'all to be on the lookout for that. And our brothers and sisters, we need to stop mimicking these European cultures. We have adapted to these murderous religions and homosexuality and propagandas from bleaching skin and, changing our names. There was an African Nigerian brother that I met, and he changed his name from an African name to an American name because he was laughed at in his own country because he didn't know how to speak English. So he paid his way through school to speak English, and when he became an adult, he changed his name. So we want to switch the script, flip the script, and we want to get this going on. We want Marcus Garvey's vision to go far. We want it to happen, and it will happen, because people like us, we strong, and we represent Garveyism. So, Black Power people, just keep going out there, not just keep banging on Facebook, with cap locks, thinking you all tough and hard on Facebook. But, if you're really about this RBG and you're really about loving yourself and loving your people, get out there in the communities, start, talking to brothers and sisters about the movement. Tell them about the UNIA, tell them, work for yourself. Quit trying to, kiss ass to these white people to get some type of employment. Start establishing your own food because, like you said, Brother Akbar, they are poisoning the food. So Marcus Garvey is way ahead of his time because I actually watched a video where they taking food dyes. It's like watermelon is all dried out and rotted, and they take needles and they squirt red food dye in it to make it look like it's fresh food. They rinse food in all types of chemicals. The chicken, they fatten them up with all kinds of steroids. So you need to be careful what you put in your body because your temple is what matters. And obviously, Marcus, he knew that. So, stick around, us RBG warriors, we won't get it done. We definitely want to get it done. And those coons, we got to leave those coons behind because you can't keep talking to a wall because walls don't talk back. Black Power.
Yes. We're about to sign out, and remember this. The white man's been doing a public relation campaign on you from slavery to now, and has never stopped to keep you in the position that you're in. Garveyism will take you out of this position if you want to get out. If you want to be a slave and you don't want to come out of the matrix, step aside, because there's people that's ready to give our people the information and the training that will get them free from this beast. This is the Truth Doctor, and this has been another episode of Wake Up African People. Good night.